Carlos Giménez is the founder and chief operation officer of DiNA Science in Spain, in Barcelona. Dr. Carlos got his PhD degree in Autonomous University of Barcelona. Beginning from 1989, he has been doing clinical research and clinical PGT for more than 3 decades. Oh my gosh, I was a baby in 1989, which is truly amazing. So I'm very happy that Carlos can share his clinical experience of performing PGT, and his title today is why is the origin of aneuploidy important? All right, without further ado, Carlos, the floor is yours.
So yeah, you are in front of a dinosaur in this scope. So thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you so much to Genomics to invite me to give this talk. Well, I want to begin showing you from where I come from. This is well, I come from a small corner in South Europe. It's a corner that we call it Catalonia, and we have our very own version of St. Valentine's Day, which we celebrate on the 23rd of April. So it was yesterday, and we have an unique tradition that women give books to men, and men gives roses to women. But at the end, we end up changing books and roses. And we like to call this day the most beautiful day of the year. So if you ever visit Catalonia in April, make sure to be there on the 23rd, and you will be able to experience our most beautiful day of the year yourself. But now, saying that, it's hard to find a connection between the most beautiful day of the year and an aneuploidy. So keep it simple and dive straight in. So you know that chromosomal aberrations constitute the principal etiological factor in human reproductive inefficiency, both natural and also in assisted reproduction techniques. And its manifestation, implantation failure, miscarriages, and congenital disorders. Chromosome aberrations accounts for among 50 to 60% of first trimesters miscarriages. And the incidence in newborn of these aneuploidies is about 0% of newborns, with special attention with microdeletions and microduplications that accounts for most of these affected newborns. Whenever the risk is known, we can offer genetic counseling to the patients. We can advise them to go to a natural conception without any test and accept the risk of having an affected child, or a natural conception followed by a prenatal diagnosis. Other ways to be parents that non-biological, such as adoption, foster care, remaining child-free, or change of partner. Also, we can offer them gamete or embryo donation. And finally, we can offer them in vitro fertilization followed by pre-implantation genetic testing. So, why aneuploidy is important? As you will know, as maternal age increases, it increases also the percentage of aneuploid embryos, and so increases the rate of sterility and infertility. We also know that most of the aneuploidies are incompatible with life, exception those trisomies for chromosomes 13, 18, 21, abnormalities of sex chromosomes and some of micro deletions or micro duplications. Likewise, we know that most of the aneuploidy is maternal in origin and is considered the main causes of IVF failures by embryonic arrest, implantation failure, or miscarriage. And this study of McCoy shows they divide the embryos in those that reach the blastocyst stage and those that arrest in culture. And and among those arrested embryos, they show that 94% of those embryos were aneuploids, whereas among those that reached the blastocyst stage, the aneuploidy rate was 69%. But if we look deeply in these results, we can also see how aneuploidy is much higher among those bad morphology embryos compared with those with a good morphology. But what happens if we transfer back aneuploid embryos? This is a study done by Antonio Capalvo. They pull 5 different works publications together, and in those studies show the results of doing biopsy of embryos, transferred those embryos, and later on they did the PGT-A. So finally they can assess the outcome of transfers of embryos that turn out to be aneuploid. So those are regular, those cases are regular cases where systematically they transfer back aneuploid embryos. And as you can see, the miscarriage rate was very high, but it was even higher the lethality rate when transferring back aneuploid embryos. So transferring aneuploid embryos is absolutely useless. Well, you know that we use NGS to carry out PGT-A, and this allows us to determine which embryos are euploid, what embryos are aneuploid. Obviously, the euploid embryos will be transferred, the aneuploid embryos were not. But also, we can detect embryos that results in a mosaic constitution. Different societies has made different recommendations according to the mosaicism, and they classify the mosaic embryos according to the number of aneuploidy. Simple when there is just 1 or 2 chromosomes involved, and complex when there are more than 2. The type of aneuploidy can be whole chromosome or segmental, and the level of mosaicism is low range when it's between 31 and 50%, and high range between 51 and 70%. Here you can see the different ways that mosaicism can arise. In most of the cases, the origin are meiotic errors, but there are also some of them that can arise from meiotic errors. That means that there is a whole aneuploid embryo that at sometimes during the first pre-implantation divisions, one of the cells becomes euploid and turning out the embryo as a mosaic. So this is to summarize this first part, that embryonic aneuploidy is a leading cause of implantation failure, miscarriage, and infertility, and its frequency increases with maternal age. So there is the PGT for aneuploidy origin, it's called PGT-A, and it combines the analysis, the SNP analysis, together with the parental samples. And doing this combination of the analysis, we can get a detailed embryonic karyogram But also it allows us to determine the ploidy of the embryos, the detection of the parental origin of the error, and also determine the type of error that has occurred. Well, one of the things that to talk a little bit later is that I have the advantage that that at the first talk they explained us this paper before. So, but this is the parental haplotype tracing method described by Zhang, and and by doing this analysis, you can see that when the embryo is euploid, the allelic frequency is similar between maternal and paternal. So at the end of the day, the frequency is 0.5. And then depending on if there is a monosomy or a trisomy, these frequencies changes. But also by doing this pH tracing method, it allows us to detect if the monosomy is maternal in origin, if the trisomy is paternal in origin, or maternal in origin or paternal in origin. So this system allows us to detect the origin of the aneuploidy. I want to show you some of the results that we have in our lab. Well, I'm a little bit shy because here they explain the results of 40,000 embryos. Well, we are a little bit modest, so we have 1,500. Those embryos come from 300 PGT-A cases. And what we saw is that in this cohort of embryos, the aneuploidy rate was 31%, and we were able to detect not only aneuploidy but also ploidy and uniparental abnormalities. When we look at the origin of the aneuploidy events, we were able to determine that almost 79% of the aneuploid events comes from the maternal side. Around 5% were mixed, and around 16% are only paternal in origin. So we finally, I want to show you that most of the trisomies comes from the maternal side, but what is interesting is that for partial aneuploidies, 76% of them are paternal in origin. So this is important because sometimes when in the lab they offer an spare fermentation to the patient, this that can be reflected in the embryos. So using this system, we use a SNP array to do this, to trace the origin of the aneuploidy. We perform this in a couple that comes to us for a PGT-M because she was a carrier of a pathogenic variant in BRCA1. The couple was young, both were 34 years old. We performed 2 cycles of IVF. In the first one, no healthy embryo was detected. And in the second one, among 6 embryos, 2 were healthy and euploid, 1 affected and aneuploid, 3 healthy and aneuploid. Well, apart from the low yield of euploid embryos, in that case, the expected will be 50% of the embryos will be healthy. What is not worth in that case is that 8 of 11 embryos are aneuploid. And that was a young couple. So we therefore did the aneuploidy analysis. Here you have the couple and all the embryos, and we go deeper in the analysis of aneuploidy. It turns out that most of the anomalies the embryos have are paternal in origin. So this was a PGT-A case, so it's not the case. But if this was a PGT-A case, and we got these results, in most of the cases, the clinician will offer the couple an oocyte donation, or at least that happens in my country. In most of the cases, when there is a lot of aneuploidy in the embryos, what they offer to the patients is oocyte donation. And if this what happened, this recommendation will be absolutely useless, because the problem was in the paternal side. So sometimes it's important to see if the anomalies comes from the dad or from the mom, because they can help us to do a recommendation for the next cycle. Analyzing that deeper, the results, we can see the percentage of aneuploidy embryos according to the origin and the maternal age. Regarding this number, regarding the total of embryos, you can see that the maternal origin increases with age, as we know. But if we look only to aneuploid embryos, what is interesting is that in the young group of patients, half of the abnormalities are paternal in origin. So we have a couple in this group, and we saw a lot of aneuploidy. Maybe it's important to look at the origin, just in case the cross is in the father and not in the mother. And when we do the same, but looking at the paternal age, there are no differences among the different groups according to the age of the father. So the key point here is that defining the parental and meiotic mitotic origin of aneuploidy reveals age-specific parameters that are invisible to copy number variation alone. And the last section of my talk is why distinguish between meiotic and mitotic. So meiotic aneuploidies predominantly arise through segregation errors in female meiosis, and they give rise to an embryo that all the cells of the embryos are aneuploid. In the other side, mitotic aneuploidies occurs in early cleavage stage, and this and the meaning of these differences clinically is that in the case of meiotic aneuploidies, there is a reduced reproductive potential, most of them incompatible with life. Whereas if the error is mitotic, we know that this is the cause of the mosaicism, and in some circumstances we can consider those embryos to be transferred. This is an example that I want to show you that we published last month. Here we have an analysis of two embryos in which we can see here a trisomy for chromosome 16, and here we can see a trisomy for chromosome 5 and chromosome 9. So according to these results, those embryos will not be transferred. But when we look deeper in these embryos, in the first one, we can see that they are both homologs. They are both parental homologs, meaning that this is a meiotic error. So this is a complete trisomy, so we are not going to transfer these embryos as we explained before. But in the second one, we only see one of the homologs. So in that case, it's that trisomy. It's mitotic in origin. So in that cases, depending on the number of embryos available and so on, and the morphology, we can consider these embryos to be transferred. So in that case, we can gain some embryos to be considered to be transferred. This is the same work that I showed you before, the one from Sang and co-workers. In that case, this is to show you that how this system is smart enough to differentiate errors in meiosis 1 or in meiosis II, or in mitosis, and just to show you that how different is the B allele frequency chart depending if the monosomy is meiotic in origin or mitotic in origin. So this allows us to determine in which type of division has occurred. So by doing that, they were able to reclassify as euploid 52% of mosaic embryos. And that means a reduction in the mosaicism rate from 40% to 6%. And also, and the most important, an increase in the proportion of transferable embryos by 8.6%. And that's what is important for our patient, to have more embryos to be selected to be transferred. Well, this is the last paper I want to show you. This was published last year by Pope and co-workers. And what they saw is that in those embryos with those mosaic embryos in the low range fraction, the origin of the mosaicism was not meiotic. And I say it was not meiotic because that's what they say in the paper, as you can see here. And instead, among those high-range mosaic embryos, almost 2/3 of those embryos, the error was meiotic. So that means that probably those embryos falling in the low-range mosaicism are mitotic in origin and can be considered to be transferred. Whereas those with high range, some of them will be mitotic in origin, a few of them, so they also can be considered for transfer, but most of them are meiotically in origin, and those embryos should not be transferred in any case. So, as a key point for this part of the talk is that distinguishing from mitotic errors refines mosaic embryo classification and directly impacts which embryos are considered suitable for transfer. And finally, my conclusion is that most embryonic aneuploidies are maternal meiotic errors that rise with age and largely determine reproductive outcome, and that PGT for aneuploidy origin, by resolving the origin and mechanism of aneuploidy, improves counseling and embryo selection, increasing transferable embryos while minimizing the risk, the genetic risk. And that's all. So thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, Carlos.
Muchas de nada.
For Competence, datos y experiencias. Thank you very much for sharing. Mosaicism is indeed very important for the field to treat. And the floor is now open for maybe one question because we're running a little bit behind the schedule.
Just as you are very, very interested. No.
So it was a very nice lecture, and we are delighted to have this information. We all always talking about the NGS and the SNP analysis, and we know that there is, if you do the massive parallel sequencing, there is error on the SNP level. So would you like to prefer to do the SNP based analysis on the microarray or the NGS?
I will prefer to do it in the NGS, just because it's just one technique and the protocol is the same. I have to say that we are very, very happy with our sleep array platform, but we want to transition it to do it by NGS because it makes easy the work in the lab. So we are on it. Hopefully we are going to do that in the next few months.
Thank you.